Warframe's blade hums, Bala's recoils, a veil shreds, Lotus light drowns in Kuva 6's sickly glow. What did Teshin see in the glyphs that shattered his plea for peace? Ran but with deep in his veins, steeped in rot he swore to expose. Asterisk, you were never meant to survive this. Asterisk, his final breath echoed the Queen's design, a warning woven as a noose. The Tenno's war began not with choice, but with a thread pulled from their cradle. The Queens did not warn Teshin, thread they pulled from their armed him. His final breath echoed the words Queen's design, a slicing open the warning woven as a noose Tenno's delusion of choice. Beneath transference's bond, technocyte veins thrum with a script older than the Orokin. Kuva is not a parasite, it is progeny, a weaponized echo of the fallen empire's ambition. Every Warframe's pulse whispers the Queen's edict, servitude masquerades as salvation. To reject this fate is to unravel the origin system's lie. To accept it is to become the blade that ends what the void began. This quest does not ask if the Tenno will fight. It asks whether they will break their chainsaw, become the executioners of their own soul. The Kuva's silent bargain began not in the war within, but in the Orokin's vaults. Grineer queens infused it into their liches, their blades, their bones, a substance to cheat death. A leash to Titan, the Tenno, cradled in cryosleep, dreamt of Warframes as armor. The second dream shattered that, children bound to machines, not masters. Ladas, words carefully unspoken, left the Tenno brittle. Teshin Dax, heir to a Grineer bloodline, unearthed Kuva's truth, or so it seemed. His warning that Kuva erodes the soul was a Queen's script, a key turned in the Tenno's mind. The war within's texts, fragmented and bleeding, hinted at corruption. But the Queens had already woven their trap. Every scar the Tenno bear, every battle fought, feeds the cycle. The Kuva does not merely weaken, it compels. Teshin's revelation became the hook, the bait on a line stretched across centuries. The Queens needed not soldiers, but avatars. Flesh and machine reforged in their image. The Tenno's chains gleam with their own fury, and the trap, now sprung, demands more than blood. Teshin's voice cracks over static. His transmission hums with the buzz of a failing relay. The air reeks of ozone and burning circuitry. Asterisk, the Kuva, they are not what you think. Asterisk, his fingers trace the Dax sigil etched into his gauntlet, cold, unyielding. The screen flickers. His face dissolves into static, a trap, always a trap. Kuva 6's data vault overheats, glyphs pulse indigo, then red. The floor vibrates with subsonic growls. A Warframe's fragmented memory flashes, a Queen's throne, her crown a nest of living wire. Asterisk, you will see what we command. Asterisk, the glyphs convulse. A whisper threads through the static. Asterisk, Tenno awaken. Asterisk, the air thickens with the tang of rust. The war within was never theirs to fight. The cryo chambers groan, frost clings to the glass. Inside, a Tenno's breath fogs, then stills. Decades of suspended time warp their dreams. The Ladas voice, soft as a lullaby. Asterisk, you were saved. Asterisk, but the truth gnaws, their minds shaped in stasis. Their wills pruned by the Orokin's hands, the Queens did not save. They asterisk seeded asterisk, the Warframe's vessels, the Tenokis. Teshin's final word hangs, asterisk fracture. Asterisk, the screen dies, silence, then a click. The vault's doors grind open. A shadow moves, not Kuva, not yet, but something fed by their lies. The trap was never the warning, it was the asterisk response asterisk. The Queens knew the Tenno would come. They asterisk wanted asterisk the Tenno to see, to burn, to break. The static returns. A new glyph flares, a path, a choice. Or another thread in the snare. The Tenno rise, their gauntlets crackle. The war within is a mirror, and the Queens, they are waiting. The Tenno rise, their gauntlets crackle. The war within is a mirror. What if the reflection shows not a savior, but a puppeteer? Teshin's voice, once a beacon, now echoes hollow. His warning was no shield, it was the Queen's scalpel. Kuva 6's texts burn with truth. They whisper of a vision twisted into a snare. The Queens did not fear the Kuva, they studied it. Weaponized it. Teshin's visions were not his own. They were a script written in Orokin blood. The Tenno's choice to serve a myth spun from fractured data. Each decision frayed by Kuva signals. Each victory a debt to Queens long dead. What is self-determination when the mind is a battlefield? Teshin's message was a key, but it unlocked only the Queen's vault. The trap was not in the war within, it was in the belief there was a war at all. The Kuva's power was never to be resisted, it was to be ridden. The Tenno's gauntlets crackle. They think they fight for freedom. They fight for a dynasty's ghost. What if the Queen's greatest weapon was not the Kuva, but the Tenno's faith in their own clarity? During the Tenno's cryosleep, the Queens exploited their psychological fragility, weaving threads of doubt. Teshin's warning was no revelation. It was a seed planted in frozen time, a whispered truth that bound their wills to the Kuva's hunger, a trap dressed as salvation. The war within was only the first echo of their silent thrall. The man in the wall does not whisper secrets. It mirrors fractures in the Tenno's soul. The Queens carved this mirror from the same void that birthed the Warframes. How else to weaponize a being that walks as both host and host? The void remembers, not as a library of dead stars, but as a parasite feasting on living minds. Every Tenno who grieves, who rages, leaves a scent in the dark. The Queens did not warn Teshin. They *programmed him. His confession was a key, turning locks the Tenno did not know they held. Warframes are not machines. They are husks, hollowed by technocyte fire, screaming in the static between cells. Transference does not merge flesh and steel. It binds a human's will to a dying god's puppet. The Queens called it symbiosis. It is a noose. Rage does not fracture the Tenno. It refines them. The man in the wall shows what the Queens cannot, a face that shifts with every heartbeat, a name that dissolves like ash. You think you are fighting the Kuva. You are the knife they sharpen. Every battle, every sacrifice calculated. The war within was not war, it was a rehearsal. The Kuva's hunger is a script written by the Queens. They let you win, let you believe you chose, the cost, a single name spoken in the silence between screams, a name that is not yours. The void hums now. It remembers how the Tenno tremble when the truth clicks into place. No warning, no salvation, only the weight of a bargain struck in the marrow of your bones. The Queens do not need the Kuva, they need you. What does it mean to be free when your rage is their fuel? CTA, the name still echoes. What comes next when the Tenno finally hear their own voice? The warning was no warning at all. It was a snare woven from Dax's bone and Kuva venom. Teshin spoke the truth, but only the truth the Queens allowed. His heritage, not his hubris, made him their instrument. The Dax were not Kuva's victims. They were its first architects. Their blood carried the blueprint. The Queens saw it. They shaped his words like a blade, sharp enough to cut the Tenno loose from lies only to bind them tighter. What good is a blade if the hand that wields it is not your own? The Kuva does not corrupt, it reveals. It shows the Tenno what the Queens have always known. Their blessing was a leash. Every surge of power, every flicker of defiance curated. The war within was not a battle. It was a confession. Teshin's revelation peeled back the veil, but only to let the Queens breathe deeper. His voice, trembling with Dax's truth, became their echo. The Tenno fought the Kuva's chains, unaware they were shackled by the very act of fighting. The tremor in the narrator's voice is no performance. It is the weight of an unspoken name. Teshin's lineage, the Kuva's whisper, the Orokin's silent smirk in the gaps between starsol pieces of a bargain struck before the Tenno ever drew breath. The Queens did not need to enslave. They only needed the Tenno to believe they were free when their rage was their fuel. The truth emerges slowly, a shadow in the Tenno's reflection. A question no longer rhetorical. If the trap was set in blood and starlight, who among them still holds the key? The void's memory is a chain. The Queens wove freedom into a noose, its knot tightening with every blade the Tenno raised. Teshin's warning, a thread in their design. The void whispers not to warn, but to bind each echo a shackle, each scar a script. The key was never theirs to hold. The war within was only the first wound. The rest beat have yet to bleed. The chamber hummed with dying glyphs. Blue light flickered like breaths of a suffocating beast. Teshin's cloak hung tattered, his Dax blood singing with Kuva's rot. The Tenno stood steady, though Warframes behind them screamed Limbus' voice, a warble of static, Excalibur's blade fracturing into ash. You were never meant to survive this, Teshin whispered. His fingers traced a seal, the air reeked of ozone and burnt flesh. A Warframe's scream broke sharp a sound like glass. The Tenno turned. Volk's hollow eyes wept ichor, his body convulsing as transference tore him apart. Technocyte veins pulsed, then crumbled. Forgive us, the Warframe gasped. The Tenno did not answer. Cold seeped into their bones. Kuva 6's glyphs dissolved, leaving only Teshin's grin sharp, triumphant. Asterisk the queens did not weaponize you, you weaponized them, until they had no choice but to finish what they started. Asterisk the Tenno's helm grew heavy. Warframes fell silent, a memory surfaced, a child's hand, small and trembling, pressing a relic into theirs. Asterisk to break the cycle, asterisk the child had said. Now that relic burned a cipher for a debt paid in lives. Teshin's form began to fade. Asterisk Kuva does not corrupt, it reveals. Asterisk his laughter echoed in the void left by severed bonds. The Tenno knelt, not in defeat, in witness. The last glyph blinked out. Silence. The war within had bled its final wound, but in the dark something stirred will not shattered, only reforged. The Tenno stir, their warframes whisper lies now. Kuva lances burn with borrowed fire. The Ladas words were chains, polished to a prayer. Queens carved their will into the Tenno's bones. Teshin's glyph was no warning door, not a shield. The Tenno chose, believing they chose. Teshin knew the Kuva's truth, knew it was Orokin blood, forged in a war older than the sleep. But the queens wore his voice like a mask. His revelation was a forge, heeding the Tenno's purpose. Every battle since has been a debt, every kill a signature. The queens never needed weapons, they needed asterisk witnesses asterisk. The Tenno's war is not theirs to end. It is a script the queens wrote in the Tenno's sleep. The war within was a rehearsal. The true war begins when the Tenno kneel. Kuva merchants now trade in silence. Their lines, once sharp, are hollow. The lotus offers guidance. Her voice, once light, is light. The Tenno walk a field of mirrors. Trust is a language erased. The queens wear war not as a storm, but a slow unraveling. The Tenno's will is not shattered. It is a thread wound tight around a blade, and when it snaps, the blade will bleed queens. The Levirian archives whisper of Teshin's, and not a martyr's fall, but a hunter's snare. His words, carved into Samaris dust, were not truth but script. The queens did not warn the Tenno of Kuva's hunger, they fed it. Each blade, each bond a leash were branded. The Tenno, children in dead skins, were never agents. They were switches flicked between masters. Orokin thrones, sentient Wiresame tune, controlled by another name. Teshin's trap lay not in knowledge, but in the choice to wield or reject. Both served the hunger. The war within was no end, a rehearsal. The blade that bled queens also bled Tenno's. What freedom when every sword-lifting hand is a ghost in another's breath? The records do not ask. They answer a thread wound tight. It does not snap, it unravels. And in the unraveling, the skin of the dead breathes again, not to liberate, to remember. How the game was never theirs to change. 211 words. What if the warning was the snare? Teshin's truth bound the Tenno to the queen's will. The Kuva's chains were forged by their hands. The indifference at Kuva's chains were whispered in walls, a shadow beyond the queen's design. The trap was never the war within. It was the breath in the dead skin. The memory of a game played without you. The void holds its next trap waiting. What if the next step is the first strike?